A very good morning, history enthusiasts. So happy to have you all back with us. Today, we have the pleasure of welcoming Dr. Hemant Dave, an esteemed scholar and dedicated educator. Let me put you on mute. Okay. An esteemed scholar and dedicated educator as our book reviewer. Dr. Dave is an associate professor in history at Sardar Patel University, Vallabh Vidyanagar, where he has been teaching history, archaeology, and Indian philosophy for the past 20 years. His academic journey includes a PhD in ancient Indian history, culture, and archaeology from Deccan College, Pune, where he specialized in scientific method and archaeology with a distinctive Indian epistemological approach. Dr. Dave's research interests cover a broad range of topics within South Asian studies, including Sanskrit aesthetics, particularly the concept of Ananda, Nyaya epistemology, historical consciousness in ancient India, and theoretical archaeology. His expertise also extends to the study of Gujarati language and literature from the 19th century, as well as the anthropology of religion, with a focus on the evolution of religious cults, regional cults. Sorry. Recently, he completed a major research project funded by the UGC on 19th century Gujarat, uh, genealogy of Gandhian ideology, highlighting his profound engagement with regional history and cultural heritage. Dr. Dave's wealth of knowledge in these areas makes him the ideal reviewer of today's book, New Horizons in Indology, Professor Dr. H.G. Shastri commemoration volume, which is honoring the legacy of late Professor Hari Prasad G. Shastri, a pioneer in Indological studies, as well as the father of our honorary president, Shri Nandan Shastri, sir. Join us as Dr. Dave shares his insights into this remarkable tribute to Professor Shastri, reflecting on new directions in Indology and how they resonate with contemporary research. So, I also welcome Shri Nandan Shastri, sir, honorary president of the History Enthusiasts. And I also welcome all the audience members, the viewers who are watching us live, and those who will be watching us later on. So, thank you for giving me this opportunity to welcome our book reviewer of today. I now give up the stage to Dr. Hemant Dave, sir.
Good morning to all of you. Thank you, Manali, for having me today. And I also thank Nandan Shastri Sahib for inviting me to speak on this uh, book, New Horizons in Indology, which is a commemoration volume of Hari Prasad Ganga Shankar Shastri. Now, it is always a delight to speak on a person whom one admires. And I admire Professor Shastri very deeply for his vast erudition, not only in Sanskrit and epigraphy, but also in creative literature, in history, and so many other diverse disciplines. So I have, uh, you know, divided my today's talk into three parts. The part one will be dealing with H. Hari Prasad Ganga Shankar Shastri or H.G. Shastri, we call it that way in English, uh, and his contributions. Part two will be devoted to the volume, of which part one deals with the reminiscence by his fellow colleagues, his students, and his family members. And part three will be on the academic papers, articles which are there in the volume. So, Professor Hariprasad Gangashankar Shastri came from a very illustrious family. Not very far from where I'm sitting, some 20 kilometers from here, there's a place called Malataj in Australia Pitla district, which was under the Gaikwads of Baroda. So he was born in Malataj, and his family surname was actually Travadi or Trivedi, what is called in Hindi Tiwari. So his original surname was Tiwari, one who knows the three Vedas. But since his grandfather Shastri Brajlal Kadidas, so Brajlal Kadidas Travadi was his grandfather, and he was a great scholar, and he knew Sanskrit He knew Pali, he knew Ardhamagadi, he knew Apabhramsh, he knew Old Gujarati and so many other languages which was required to know at that point of time for a traditional Pandit. And also, in a way, the one who has imbibed some Western knowledge. So, given his vast erudition, this Vrajlal Kalidas Travadi came to known as Shastri, and this is how the surname came to be attached to this family. And this Vrajlal Kalidas Shastri, or Travadi as he was called, he was born in 1825 and he passed away in 1892. And he was a scholar of grammar, philosophy, literature, and he wrote one very early book. And which, what is interesting is that this book is on the history of Gujarati language, and it was published in 1866. So much before Beam's comparative grammar of Indo-Aryan languages, or before Jules Bloch's La Formation de la langue marathi, which was published in completely in 1920, 1919, 1920. But it is an old style philological work. But nevertheless, it is a very important book in which he tries to show that how this Gujarati language was evolved from Sanskrit. He also wrote one Utsargamala and one Dhatu Sangraha, which deals with the dhatus of Gujarati language. And in philosophy, he wrote one book on Vaisheshika Tarkasara, which deals with the philosophy of Vaisheshika Nyaya school, and it was published posthumous. So he was a very illustrious scholar and very well respected scholar in Gujarati circles in the second half of the 19th century. And his son Ganga Shankar Shastri was a ritualist, Karmakandin, a very learned Brahmana. And Raghular Kalida Shastri's younger brother, his name was Chotam Kavi. He is known as Chotam Kavi, Chotalal Kalidas Shastri. And he was a very noted saint poet of his times. So Pradla Karida Shastri's son was Ganga Shankar Shastri, who, as I told you before, he was a ritualist, a karmakandi, and his son was Ganga Shankar. I'm sorry, his son was Hari Prasad Shastri. Now, Hari Prasad Shastri's elder brother, he was Shankar Lal Shastri, and he was professor of Sanskrit in Bahauddin College in Junagadh. So Professor Shastri took his primary education in Malata, and then he joined his brother in Junagadh, who was teaching the Sanskrit language. And he studied in the Bahadur Khan High School and then in the Bahauddin College. And he studied Sanskrit, and he passed his BA in 1940. And then he did his MA from Gujarat Vernacular Society, as it was called then. It is now called Gujarat Vidya Sabha, and he did his MA with Sanskrit major with epigraphy as an optional subject. Now, what is interesting is that at that point of time in Gujarat Vernacular Society, there was no teacher who could teach, epigraphy. So, in a way, Hari Prasad Shastri taught himself epigraphy. So he was thus a self-taught epigraphist. And he also opted for Ardhamakdi language. So he knew these languages, Sanskrit, Gujarati, English, and Ardhamakdi quite well. And Rasiklal Chotalal Parikh, or R.C. Parikh, who was a very well-known Sanskrit scholar of the time, he presided over the Srinagar Sanskrit Conference in All India Oriental Conference in, I don't remember the year now, but he was elected as a president, and he delivered a very important presidential address on contribution of Gujarat to Sanskrit literature. So he was his he this R.C. Parikh was his PhD guide, and he worked on cultural data from uh, Sanskrit inscriptions from Vallabhi period, and which was then published in two volumes as Maitraka Kali in Gujarat, which is a very solid work and still very useful despite many new works have been, especially in German language. We will be talking about that contribution which is published in this commemoration volume, but it is still a solid work and can be still used with much profit. So that was his PhD thesis, which was very useful. Then the second most important, see, he has written in many fields, but today I will be talking mainly about his academic contributions. Then he also edited, there was a series called Gujaratna Aitihasik Abhilekho, historical inscriptions of Gujarat as it was called in English. Is comparative, I mean, it can be compared with the corpus inscription Indicarum, which was published by ESI, the ESI. So the earlier volumes were uh, published by, I'm forgetting his name. He was curator of Prince of Wales Museum, which is now called Shivaji Maharaj Vastu Sangrahalaya. And the first three volumes were published by him, and volume 4 and 5 were published by and edited and published by Hariprasad Gangashankar Shastri, which is a very important work for those who want to study Gujarat's history, because these inscriptions are very useful, and they deal mainly with the Solanki period, Waghela period, and the Mughal period. So this is his second most important work. Then he edited with Rasiklal Chotalal Parikh, who was his guru, the Gujaratno Rajkiya and Sanskritik Ityas, political and cultural history of Gujarat, which was, modeled after the history and culture of Indian people, which was published by Bharati Vidya Bhavan and edited by the great Ramesh Chandra Majumdar and A.D. Tusarkar. So these volumes were edited by him, volume 1 and 7 with Rasiklal Chotalal Parikh. And after the demise of Rasiklal Chotalal Parikh, he edited these volumes with his student Pramit Chandra Chi Parikh, who read for his PhD on Gujaratma Brahmithi Nagri Sudhino Lipi Vikas on paleography. He was a very good scholar also with this Parikh. Then he has published around 70 undeciphered inscriptions in Gujarati and English, which is a good, I mean, it's a sizable number, 70 inscriptions from Sanskrit into Gujarati with translation or without translations. And as I said before, there's 2 volumes which he edited for Farbas Gujarati Sabha, Gujaratna Ityasik Loko, which is also an important contribution. And 7 inscriptions were redeciphered or re-edited by him. And then he wrote no less than 775 papers, which is a very, huge number. He was a very prolific writer, and he wrote almost in all the important Gujarati journals that were published at that point of time. For example, Kumar or Harbas Gujarati Sabha Traimasik or Urmi and Navrachana, Buddhi Prakash, and many other, academic journals. And the last most important work was his critical edition of the Srimad Bhagavatam Purana. We know that the first critical edition of Mahabharata, the definitive critical edition of the Mahabharata, was started in 1917 in Bhandarkar Oriental Research Institute. And after Vishnu Sitaram Sukhathankar joined it in 1925, it is considered as a landmark. And then taking inspiration from that, Oriental Institute of Baroda also published the critical edition of the Ramayana. So this critical edition of the Srimad Bhagavata Purana was taken over by this Doje Vidya Bhavan, Bodalal, Bodabhai Jeshing by Vidya Bhavan. And the first, it is, as you know, it is in 10 skandhas or 10 prakranas. The first 3 skandhas, the first 3 books were critically edited by Dr. Hariprasad Gangashankar Shastri. So I will not mention his many other publications, including creative writing. In earlier phase of his life, he wrote also in Sanskrit many Vanak plays and poems and so on and so forth. He also wrote creative short stories and plays and so on in Gujarati. And he also translated a number of texts from Sanskrit into Gujarati, for example, Karpura Manjari or some other Harshas play and Bhasa's Madhyam Rayog and so on and so forth. Professor Shastri was also a PhD guide for Indian culture and also for Sanskrit language. So I'll not go into detail of about his PhD students, which most of whom uh, were later, you know, they became very important scholars in Gujarati intelligentsia. Now this will come to this commemoration volume, New Horizons in Indology. Now, this is a very hefty volume, as you can see. It's a huge tome, and it's a fat volume actually, and quite heavy too. And it's called New Horizons in Indology, Professor H.G. Shastri commemoration volume. Yes, thank you, Manali. And it is edited by Bharti Shalat and Thomas Parmar, both of whom were his PhD students. Bharti Shalat worked on chronology as reflected in the inscriptions, and Professor Thomas Parmar worked on the Mughal era Hindu temples in Gujarat. So this is a pretty hefty volume, and it runs into around 500 pages, A4 size pages, with an I'm sorry, with a number of plates and number of plates and photographs, and contains a very detailed biodata of Professor H.G. Shastri. Unfortunately, it does not have a complete bibliography of Professor Shastri. I wish that someone should work on his bibliography, and if possible, an annotated bibliography of his writings, which runs, as I told you, in some 800 odd publications, which would give a fair idea of his scholarly output. Not that we are not aware of his scholarly output, but such a would be very useful, especially to students who would be working on different aspects of Gujarati history and Gujarati culture, or epigraphy, or numismatics, or iconology, iconography, and of course Sanskritic studies. So that is a desideratum, and I sincerely hope that some scholar would work on that. Now, the first part of this volume is reminiscences by his son Nandan Shastri, by his grandson Nilay Shastri, and his PhD students like Haripriya Rangarajan, who is a very famous art historian who has worked a lot on Vishnu, the spread of Vaishnavism in Gujarat and other parts of India, especially her work on the Varah image from Madhya Pradesh, which is a very famous, very important book, and which also backed the Asiatic Society of Mumbai medal. So one reminiscence by her. There is one by one Miss Dogra who worked on Kalhanaj Rajtarangini, and one by Yatindra Dixit. These are all the students, Thomas Parmar and Rasesh Jamindar and others. Now, among these, I see of these 500 odd pages, it will be impossible to talk about each and every contribution that is printed between these two pages. I mean, to covers. I will pick up a few, and see, I will not try to make any critical comment, because the nature of this talk is a very different one. But when required, I would, would like to make one. But on an average, I will be talking more about the content of this volume. So most important reminiscence is, I think, by Nilai, who is his great grandson, and it's a very short one page reminiscence, but it gives a very clear picture of Professor Shastri as a human being, as affectionate Dadaji, and also as a teacher. For example, Nilay says that whenever we used to go to grandparents' home on Diwali, they would do this puja. So we know that Diwali is not only about sweets, it's not only about lights, it's not only about cracking fires and so on. It's also about seeking blessings from the Devi Devatas that we worship, our Ishta Devata or Kula Devata, and so on and so forth. So it gives that idea. And I would like to read out this. It's slightly longish, but I think it gives a very clear picture of what kind of person Professor Shastri was. And he says that, Professor Shastri, what I mean is Nandan Shastri, he was working in Sardar Patel University, Vidyanagar, and he was a curator over there. So there's Nilay. He studied in Kendriya Vidyalaya, and at that point of time, this Kendriya Vidyalayas and many so-called English medium schools, they would not teach the regional languages. And Professor Shastri, and by which I mean Hari Prasad Shastri, when he knew that Nilay would not be studying Gujarati, he was little alarmed, and he thought, and rightly so, that his grandsons should be able to read and write in Gujarati. And this is what Nilay writes, and I'm quoting him. As I started growing up, Dadaji realized that my school didn't offer Gujarati as one of the subjects in curriculum. In order to ensure I could write Gujarati, he would spend time and help me to learn how to write in my mother tongue. Now, this is a scholar who is very busy in his academic pursuit, but he makes it a point, to teach his grandson Gujarati how to read and write. And he says, the knowledge acquired from that time has stayed with me even today. After Gujarati, it was turn of Sanskrit. And his family was it was a family of scholars of Sanskrit, right from, Pradlal Kalidas Shastri, and even before them. Uh, After Gujarati, it was turn of Sanskrit. As I had Sanskrit subject in my school curriculum, Dadaji made it a point to teach it to me. His dedication as a teacher reflected in him spending numerous hours to read my book and then creating his own notebook for me as a ready reference guide. So he would study, his Sanskrit text with him, with Nilay, and then he would make a note of those, lessons for him. And he says his teaching style was so impactful that it instantly made me very much interested in the language. Now that is important. Now I realize, he says, Dadaji just didn't help me get good grades. So good grades is a side, it's not that important. What's more important is, and this is very important because Nilay has absolutely captured the essence of his Dadaji's personality. And he says that it didn't help me just get good grades, but more about help me greater appreciation for the language. I think, and this is important, and this shows the ability of Shastriji as a great teacher. I think it is the hallmark of great teachers. They don't teach you to pass the exams. Most of our teachers these days, they help students to, pass the exam, but that is a completely different story. So he says that they don't teach you to pass the exam, but they guide you to become more learned. Now, this is very important because it shows a very, not only human, but a very important aspect of Shastriji scholarship as a student. And he also appreciates his Dadaji's very meticulous and very disciplined life. So he says, and this is rather useful for our young people who are listening to this talk. And he would say, and he says, Dadaji followed a specific schedule every day, and which he thought was not much fun and was monotonous. But as he grew older and he knew that for a healthy lifestyle and for a disciplined life, such a disciplined life, such a, this specific schedule was very important. So this is, so this is, it gives a very good idea about Hariprasad Shastri as a scholar, not only as a scholar, but also as a teacher and also uh, uh, as a loving Dadaji. Now, Shastriji was a very hard taskmaster, and the reminiscence by Haripriya Rangarajan or Yatindra Dikshit or Rasesh Jamindar shows that how he was a very hard taskmaster. For example, Yatindra Dikshit, he was a student of political science, and but he did his PhD under Professor Shastri, who was a recognized guide in Indian culture and Sanskrit, but not political science. So when Yatan Dixit was working under him, he guided him for the political organization of Gujarat. I mean the princely states of not exactly princely states, but the Chavras, and then the Solankis and Vaghelas, the administrative system of these three dynasties. So then he thought that he would, because he was a student of political science, he thought he would join under Professor Devabrat Pathak. But Devabrat Pathak told him that this was a topic which political science, he was more inclined to work on the 20th century politics. He was a very well-known, political scientist of Gujarat and, of course, of India. But what Shastriji told him was this, that even if you register under Professor Devbrat Pathak, I will still guide you. Now, this is the character of Professor Shastri. Though if someone was not uh, uh, registered under his name, he would still guide them. This is what makes a true teacher. But that is not the point. I was talking about how a taskmaster that he was. And Yatindra Dixit writes that his first chapter, Shastriji made him write no less than for 5 times. So he made him write that chapter for 5 times, and then he okayed it. Rasis Jamindar was not that fortunate because when he wrote his thesis, Kshatrap Kalnu Gujarat, which is, I think, one of the best thesis available on Kshatrapa era, written in any language, not just in Gujarati. So his chapter 2 was the immigration of the Shakas. And he says that Shastriji made him write this for 8 times. So after writing and rewriting and rewriting and rewriting 8 times, Shastriji okayed it. So it shows that he was a very disciplined man and he wanted his students to, have that rigorous training. And he was very careful when it came to language. He would, very punctilious when it came to words and physiology and the kind of sentences that, the argument that you make. And he was also very honest scholar. For example, Haripriya Rangarajan says that one thing I learned from Shastriji, my guide, was this. Now, see, plagiarism is a much discussed word these days. And those who do their PhD, or even in some conferences, they would require you to know plagiarism certificate or something like that. But way back in 1960s and 70s, when Haripriya Rangarajan joined for her PhD on the spread of Vaishnavism in Gujarat, mainly through the iconographic details. And she says that Rangarajan tells in her reminiscence that Professor Shastri made me aware of this, I mean, plagiarism. And he said that he specifically told her that whenever you take a word, I mean, when you quote somebody, you should make it a point to take his name. We know that many of our so-called eminent historians, uh, they take information from scholars and then they don't mention the name of those scholars, or they quote the scholars which some other scholars has quoted without even telling that this is quoted in, for example, XYZ scholar. So this it's a kind of plagiarism to me, but that's a different thing. But Professor Shastri made it a point to tell Haripriya Rangarajan, and I am sure that he must have told this to his other students who read for the PhD under his guidance, that it is very important that you acknowledge the help you get from your previous scholar, because all of us, we are sitting on the shoulders of of the giants, so that we can see farther, not because we are smarter, or we are more clever, or we are more intelligent, but because we are sitting on their shoulders. So it is always acknowledged, it is always good, it is always, honest to acknowledge your predecessors. So this is one thing that he instilled in his students. The second thing is, and this is also important, and she says that Professor Shastri and his wife made it a point to visit with her, with Haripriya Rangarajan, the various temples, stepwells, forts, and discuss those Vaishnavites images. And she says that he made me aware of the symbolic representation in those images. And one thing which reminds us, I'm not very sure if Professor Shastri read Ferguson's History of Indian Architecture. He must have. But the point I'm trying to make is that what Ferguson said, that when you look at any image or any icon or any piece of architecture, you must look at it not from your own present perspective. It's a completely different thing. That Ferguson was a very biased and, in fact, racist scholar, but that is a different thing. He says that you should approach that piece of art not from your own perspective, the current day perspective, but from the perspective of the artist. And the same was said by Hariprasad Shastri. And he said that while looking at an image, one must try to be in the shoe of the artist, and then try to understand the image and that is carved, or the piece of architecture that you are looking at. So this is also one use. And Haripriya Rangarajan says that I have inscribe these two things in my heart. One is always acknowledge your predecessors, and second, try to understand a piece of art from the perspective of the artist. So, and he was a very disciplined man. So one day, Yatindra Dikshit, he didn't turn up on time allotted to him, and he was late by an hour. So Professor Shastri made him, wait outside, and he didn't even look at him. And he continued guiding one of his students. And after some time, when the students went away, he called him in, and he scolded him. He said, "See, if you don't come on time, you waste my two ways. Two ways in what way? One, Professor Shastri, when he would give time to his PhD student, he would work on the topic so that he could discuss those things with his students. So he would make it a point to study beforehand what he has discussed with his students. So that is one thing. That time is wasted. Number two, the time allotted to the student, and when he doesn't turn up, the time is wasted. So he says that you waste my time both ways. The one that I spent on preparation, and the time that I allotted to you. And then Jatinder Dixit says that one day it rained very heavily in Ahmedabad, and I knew that Professor Shastri had given me this time, so I went to his house, completely drenched, and he was happy. Professor Shastri was apparently happy that that my student came on time, which I given to, notwithstanding the heavy rain. So these are some of the aspects of his very disciplined and academic personality. Now, uh, now we can move to the third part. This, which are academic contributions. There are a number of papers, articles, research articles in this, and they, you know, they span from prehistory to present day history, and it covers a number of disciplines. For example, archaeology, numismatics, epigraphy, modern Indian political history, religious history, and so many other fields. Now, I have chosen some topics for two reasons. One, in a short time, I cannot talk about each and every contribution that's made in this volume. But secondly, also because I don't I'm not competent enough to speak on those topics which lay outside my own specialization. So I will be talking about a couple of a few papers and show how these papers are important and how they justify this title New Horizons in Indology. So the first topic, I mean, this chapter is by Suman H. Pandya, who was Professor H.D. Sakaria's student and who worked on ceramics of Gujarat Harappan. And the paper is on Mesolithic settlements near Vadagam, district Aravali, Gujarat. Now, Mhm. In this paper, she talks about one specific site which is located in the district Aravali in northern Gujarat. Now, as all of us, I mean, those who are student of archaeology and geology, especially know that this northern Gujarat is uh, uh, falls in semi-arid region, and for a number of years the precipitation was very low, and we have a number of sand dunes. Actually, the entire North Gujarat is located on this stabilized sand dunes. So there's this place called Vadagaon, and where Professor Suman Pandya made some excavations, and there she brought to light Mesolithic culture. Now, this Mesolithic culture is divided into two chronological parts. The part one is pre-pottery, or what we call a ceramic phase with non-geometrical tools, and then the second part is with pottery, which is ceramic, and with geometrical tools. Now, these tools contain, as I said before, that there are these non-geometrical microlithic tools, a variety of blades, and then there are these geometric macroliths like lunates, points, trapeze, borers, burins, and these are made on as almost all Mesolithic and microlithic stone tools are made on very fine variety of siliceous stones like chert, jasper, and chalcedony. But she also discovered one flake on quartzite and also a chopper-like tool. Now, this is an excavation which was carried out on a very small scale. But what is important is that she says that the subsistence pattern of this community, which thrived on these stabilized in dunes. They used mixed diet of birds. Also, they consumed fish, turtle, and small games, right? And saddle kern and mullers were also reported from the site, which shows that though the Neolithic revolution, as Gordon Child called it, had not taken place, but these prehistoric people, because they use Saddle Khan and Mueller, there's no doubt that there's no doubt that they used wild grains and other plants. But she also importantly makes this suggestion, which was also made by, as we know, Gregory Kossel, and then by Kennedy and Greg Kossel in a different article, which I think was published in South Asian Archaeology, that there was a cultural interaction between the Harappan people and this Mesolithic people. Of course, this was not accepted by actually Sakaria, but that is a different thing. But the point I'm trying to make is this is an important topic because India is one country where, right from Suwan, though now in Pakistan, to in the south at Pakkam, and from Dwarika to Manipur, the entire landscape was populated by a number of people. And this is just one site, but I'm sure that there are a number of sites. If we excavate, no matter where we excavate, we find some human remains or activities of their, I mean, human activity. We come across the evidence of human activities. And she dates this uh, uh, between 6,000 to 1000 before present, which makes them more or less contemporaneous with the Harappan people. Now, there is one more paper which is by Yadubir Singh Rawat on Buddhist remain at Vadnagar in Mehsana. Now, Vadnagar is one of the most important, I would say, sites, historical sites in entire India, because this is one of the sites which, uh, as we know, that it was inhabited right from the 600 BC, 600 BCE to the present time. And this is the only site, I think, apart from very few sites like Varanasi or, Ayodhya, that's very continuously inhabited. Now we know Vatnagar as a, from literary sources, we know Vatnagar as a very important site because one of the most important subsects, I mean, sub communities of the Brahmins, Nagar Brahmins, to which Professor Shastri belonged, though he belonged to a Satudra variety of the Nagas. This Vadnagara Nagas, they are basically from this place. And according to one theory, all the Nagas they were inhabited in Vadnagar. So Vadnagar was very for a very long time a very important site for Shivite uh, what you call a Shivite center. The Hatkeshwar temple, which was destroyed by of Aurangzeb in the later, 17th century, and then it was rebuilt in the 18th century. The current temple, except the Mula Manjari on the Shikhara, that is the only part which is the original part. The rest of which was renovated at a later point of time. But that is a different story. But for a very long time, we also knew that not very far from Vadnagar, there is a place called Taranga, where we have Bhagwan Ajitanath's Chaitya, which is a very important um, uh, Jain site. But we know from Yuan Sang's travel account that Vadnagar was also a very important and flourishing Buddhist center, and he says that there was this subsect of the Buddhist Sammatiyas who were very prominent over there. But apart from this textual source, we did not have any hard empirical evidence to uh, prove that the Buddhists lived at one point of time in Vadnagar. But now this important paper, Buddhist remains at of Vadnagar, uh, very amply shows that what Yuan Shang in the 7th century wrote was not a figment of imagination, but we actually have a number of Sangaramas and actually a Bhikshuni Sangarama also, which is located within the fort, I mean, within the fort wall. And this important, and we have some, viharas and chaityas, which are located within this. Uh, 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 what you call if you can see that there is this image of Chaitya in the middle, right? So this is a monastery which was dedicated to the Bhikkhunis. So this is an important this now we have also one. You can see that there is this. I'm sorry. Uh, Now, this is on depicting a Buddhist tale, this is from Jataka tale. So, these evidence show that Buddhism was a flourishing religion in Varnaka. So, this is an important topic. Now, this is the topic which I referred to in the beginning when I talked about Professor Shastri's work on the Maitraka inscriptions. Dev Annette Schmidtchen, she was a German scholar, and she worked in on the Wallaby Kings. And this paper, Kings, Authors, and Messenger: The Composition of Maitraka Copper Plate Charters, which gives a very detailed account of the Maitraka inscriptions and the information provided in those charters, and the number of names of the kings, names of the lipikas, those who write those inscriptions, and also about the administrative units that were prevalent during that period of time. Then there is one more uh, 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 there is one more article on ancient inscription of Khiralu. Now, I don't know why this author Bharti Sharath has called this ancient inscription, because most of the inscriptions they date from the second, 12th century onwards, so that they would actually fall in the early medieval period, but that is what it is. But these are mainly Jain inscriptions, and they throw a floodlight on the kind of gachas that were prevalent in the beginning of the 13th century, and the name of those munis, and the kind of religious activities, the temples that were erected, or the images that were installed in those temples. And there are many number of images which are given. There is one more important article by Rashmi Ojha on the study of Jewish epitaphs at Ahmedabad. Now, this is, most of us, especially in history, they think that history is more about, the more ancient it is, the more historical it is. But we need to understand that even our contemporary history is no less important. We know that for a very long time, there was this Jewish settlements in Ahmedabad, and as we know that one of the most famous Sanskrit scholars of modern day Gujarat, Esther Ben Solomon, was a Jewish lady. Uh, but this paper shows that these tombstones, and she details out the names of these, those who passed away, and the information, whatever cultural and chronological information which is given in those tombstones, and the religious symbols carved on them, and typology of these tombstones, and then a detailed appendix on the names of those who passed away. It, the number goes to 267. It's a huge number, given that the Jews are a very small community, even in present day India. There is one more important paper on coinage of Saurashtra Janapada, but since numismatics is not my, not a field of my competence, I would not talk much about it. There is one more paper which is very important, which is historiography of temple architecture in Gujarat. Now, this is written by Thomas Parmar, as I said, who was Professor Shastri's PhD student, and he worked on uh, 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 Mughal temples. Now, it's a useful survey, but one important thing I would like to draw your attention to, and then I think I would sum up my today's talk. Now, as we know that Professor M.A. Daki, who worked on temple architecture, and he was the main brain behind the Encyclopedia of Indian Temple Architecture. And he worked in his initial years in the archaeological department in Gujarat state. And his superior was J.M. Nanavati. And his earlier, uh, you know, uh, publications were written in joint authorship with J.M. Nanavati as the first author. For example, the Maitraka and Sendava temples of Gujarat which was published as a special number by R.T. Bas Asiai, was written with him. And also the Selingzim temples of Gujarat was written with him, and a number of research articles. Now, in 1966, Professor Taki moved to American Academy of Banaras, which was incorporated as Center for Art and Architecture in American Institute of Indian Studies. So after 1966, interestingly, Nanavati lost its, as it seems, interest in art and architecture, and wrote almost nothing except his chapters in Gujarat Rajkiya and Sanskritik Ityas, which was edited by Said Rasikla Chotalal Parikh and H.G. Shastri. Now, Nanavati has written two chapters in Solanki Kalin, the Solanki age, architecture of Solanki age. And it was written in joint authorship with K.F. Sompura, Kantilal Fulchand Sompura, who was Professor Shastri's PhD scholar, and he who worked on the structural temples of Gujarat, which was published in 1968 by Gujarat uh, University, which is a very, I mean, which is an important, which is an important contribution to the temples of Gujarat, notwithstanding his differences with Professor M.A. Daki. Now, in uh, now this is interesting, and uh, for example, uh, uh, in Maitraka and Senthil temples of Gujarat, uh, Professor, Nanavati and Dhaki, they, divide these temples of Gujarat into uh, different typologies. And now, when Nanavati writes this chapter with Cape Sompura in the Solanki age, he differs from his own previous publication, which was published in 1969. This Solanki age was published in 1974. So within a period of 5 months, he, completely changes position. For example, they write Nanavati and Dhaki. Now, it is important to remember that this chapter is written by Nanavati and Sompura. So Nanavati and Sompura writes, and I quote, Nanavati and Dhaki call Kalsa temple Tritala and Bhansara temple Chatushtala. But the sequence of ornamentation of Chandrashala shows that they are Chatushala and Panchashala respectively. Now, Nanavati contradicts himself by saying that Kalsar temple and Bhansara temples are not Tritala and Chatustala, but Chatustala and Panchastala respectively. He also says that, the Nanavati and Sompura now writes, and I quote Nanavati and Sompura, the temples of this age, by which they mean Maitraka and Sendava temple, can be classified into three groups on the basis of their superstructure. One is Chadya Shikharanvita Shaili, the second is Rekhanvita Shikhara Shaili, and the third is Valabis Chandaja. Now, this classification offered by Nanavati and Sompura into three types of superstructure is in direct conflict with the fourfold classification offered by Nanavati and Daki in Maitraka and Sendhava temples of Gujarat. Namely, Nanavati and Daki, they divide this Shikhara Shaili into four types. The first is Famsakara, the second is Vyamanakara, the third is Shikharanvita, and fourth is Valabi Chandaja. Now, this shows that, at some point of time, or at one point of time, when Nanavati, as first author, wrote those studies on Indian temple architecture with Daki, his contribution, as can be guessed, was almost minimal. And even in the second case, when he wrote as first author, his contribution to this art and architecture of Gujarat during the Solanki period, his contribution uh, compared to K.F. Sompura's contribution was almost minimal. So this is an important article. I had reached this conclusion even before reading this, but it means that at one, what I'm trying to suggest is scholars knew that who was the brain behind writing those chapters. So in this way, though Professor Thomas Vermas has not directly said it, but it leaves no question whatsoever that what he means by when he says that there is this discrepancy. And there is one more, uh, uh, you know, uh, important paper by Makaran Mehta, who recently passed away. He was a very good scholar, and he has written a very important paper on the language of Sahajanand Swami or Swaminarayan as it's called. So, like Bhagwan Buddha and Bhagwan Mahavir before him, who preached in the local languages and not in Sanskrit, he says that Sahajanand Swami made it a point to, teach his followers in simple Gujarati, as he says, though uh, this Sahajanand Swami hailed from a place called Chapaya near Ayodhya, but he mastered Gujarati in no time because he was working in Gujarat. And he says that since his followers came from different social, economic, and cultural background, and that he was the common spiritual leader, he made it a point to talk to them in their language, Gujarati. And he says that before Mahatma Gandhi, Swami Sahajanand had used simple Gujarati language with a great success. So he used traditional regional words, idioms, metaphors, and proverbs, and so on. So this is an important paper because it shows that whosoever is a leader must be able to communicate with the people at large. So I'm working on, because this is the 150th anniversary of Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. So I'm also working on Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel's language, and I have noticed the same thing in Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel also, because when he talks to the mass, the peasants and the rural folk, he makes it a point to use so many proverbs, so many metaphors, so many phrases which directly, communicates and he makes it a point that his message is reached out to those who had come to listen to him. So this is a very important paper where Makar Mehta shows that how Gujarati language and his usage of Gujarati language made him a very successful religious leader. So instead of uh, emphasizing on Sanskrit, which is Deva Bhasha or Girbana Bhasha as it's called, but he made it a point to communicate with his followers in simple Gujarati language. But all in all, I think this volume is very, good contribution. It makes a good contribution, especially insofar as the history of Gujarat is concerned, and also because there is a paper on Auli Karasil, very important paper, or there's also this paper on Panchmark coins of Saurashtra, which makes a very good contribution to some very important discoveries made within the last, 20 or 10, 2 decades or 3 decades. And I think it's a fitting contribution to the kind of scholarship uh, uh, Professor Shastri displayed in his 800 odd publications. And I think I should stop here. And if there are any questions, I would be happy to take. Thank you.
Uh, Thank you very much, sir. We are deeply grateful for the depth and insight that you brought to today's review, especially considering you powered through your sore throat, and your expertise and dedication truly shown as you shared the life history of Professor H.G. Shastri and offered such a thoughtful review of the commemoration volume. You not only honored Professor Shastri's legacy, but also highlighted the qualities that made him a revered figure in Indology. Thank you for your commitment and for bringing this tribute to life and with such clarity and respect. It was an absolute pleasure, sir, to uh, for that you shared your knowledge with us. If with your permission, we can have a discussion for a couple of minutes.
Of course, it was a delight, to speak on a person, as I said, one admires. It was a pleasure.
Yes. So these are all questions that I have framed. So, how do you think we can bridge traditional Indological scholarship with modern research methodologies to gain new insights? When we talk about research by Professor Shastri.
Absolutely. This is a very important topic. Actually, yesterday I was speaking to my friend who is from Deccan College, and he was under the impression that this Shastri was Hirananda Shastri, who was in archaeological survey of Baroda state, and who is father of uh, Aggeya and a father-in-law of Kapila Vatsyayan. So I said, no, this Shastri is different from uh, uh, Hirananda Shastri. This is Hari Prasad Shastri, and I told him that he was in full command of his data. But I would like to read out what I wrote to him. So this is an important, because in a way it directly it directly uh, mm, uh, yes. And okay, and I wrote, good scholar, old style, full command over data, but no fancy theories. So, and what he replied to me was this: that is what actually needed, more facts and data, less theories. So I'm very, see, when it comes to fashionable theories, not that I'm not I'm antagonistic to these fashionable theories of post-structuralism and reconstruction and discourse analysis and so on and so forth. But what I feel, even when we talk about Marxism or some other fashionable theory, though Marxism is not a fashionable theory anymore, but what I'm trying to say is that when one does not have a full command over one's data, and when one tries to apply a theory, it is surely it is sure that it backfires. So once you need to have a full command over your data, and only then you try to understand that data from a particular theory. Unfortunately, for the past, I mean, for several decades, I have seen the tendency among Indian scholars to take the slightest data and then apply a number of theory or a theory to it, and then derive far-fetched conclusions which are not supported by data. And I don't think it helps in any way in advancement of knowledge. So I am of the opinion that one needs to have a full command over one's data, including linguistic data, because so many of our eminent historians, they don't have a command either of Sanskrit or Prakrit, or they don't know epigraphy, they don't know numismatics, they don't know iconography, they don't know. I mean, if you give them a piece of, say, black and red ware, they will not be, I think, will be able to understand whether this is a black and red ware or some other ware. So this kind of appalling indifference or appalling ignorance, I don't think we can make very important contribution to the knowledge, to the field of knowledge. At the best, you can throw up some names, you can throw up some fancy theories, but not, it will not, what I would say, it would not, make any contribution towards what you call advancement of knowledge. Yes. So it's
Thank you,
important
sir.
that we have a complete command over our data, and then we apply theories to it. Yes. SK, Aruni was asking something.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
What you said is
Uh,
absolutely right, sir. Dr. S.K. Aruni sir has joined us, and he's asked a very good question. What was the has the Asiatic Society of Bombay branch contributed to Gujarat's history and cultural studies? If so, how do we value it?
See, at one point of time, actually, not much work has been done on this Western school of Indology, as because see, Aruni's guide and my guide are the same Professor K. Padaya, and he would, when he used to teach us history of Indian archaeology, he would say that there was this Madras school of Indology, and we know that was this Bengal school of Indology. But there was one also Western Indian school of Indology, in which he would include the Bhandarkar Oriental Research Institute and this a Bombay branch of Asiatic Society, which is now called Asiatic Society of Mumbai, and then this Oriental Institute, Vadodara. And there were a number of scholars like Professor M.A. Dhaki or Professor H.D. Sakaria or V.S. Supatankar or G.K. Bhatt, and so many other illustrious names. But insofar as this Asiatic Society of Bombay or Bombay branch of Indian Asiatic Society was concerned, uh, beginning with Stevenson, who tried to decipher, if unsuccessfully, some inscriptions in the Western Indian caves. But that's Baudaji, with the help of Pandit Bhagwanlal Indraji, deciphered a number of inscriptions in Deccan, in Kanheri, in Ajanta, Ellora, in Karle, Baja Besa, and so many other cave temples. So, in a way, the what you call the publications, I mean, the Journal of Bombay branch of Royal Asiatic Society made a very sterling contribution to in my understanding, to the history of not only of Gujarat but also of Maharashtra, actually Western Indian side of uh, I mean Western India. So it made a sterling contribution, no doubt, insofar as the history of Gujarat is concerned. Actually, I am of the opinion that any scholar who is working on Gujarat must pass through all the volumes of Asiatic Society of Bombay, because there is a lot of information, not only, for example, I remember a very important paper on the Rabaris of Gujarat. And I saw a couple of years back a PhD thesis on the Rabaris of Gujarat. And I was dismayed to know that this very important article on the Rabaris of Gujarat, there are a number of, folk songs in Gujarat script which was printed in this article. It was not made use of. So I think that those who work on Gujarat, they need to go through the uh, what you call I mean the back volumes of, for example, one more. Krishnaji wrote his Kala, in which the history of Gujarat is written, and it was translated by uh, uh, Krishnaji's Ratnamal. It was translated into English by, with the help of Dalpat Ram. It was translated into Gujarat and published in one of the numbers, I think 1970, I am sorry, 1870. It was published posthumous because Alexander Kinloch Forbes passed away in 1864. So it was published posthumous. But what I'm trying to say is it's a very important, see, in so far as this institute is concerned, it made a very important contribution to unravel the history of Gujarat. Yes.
Yes, sir. So my question is, how can we inspire younger generations to engage with Indology with a rigor and discipline similar to that of Professor Shastri?
See, we need to take inspiration from such great stalwarts, and we need to imbibe those values. For example, most of us, I'm not sure this is an overstatement, maybe, but most of us, we don't live a disciplined life. At least I don't live one. But to make any progress or to make any success, I mean, to make any contribution to the pool of knowledge, it is very imperative that we live a disciplined life. And secondly, we need to be very honest, not only with whom we are quoting or whom we are taking help from, but also being honest in trying to, uh, uh, trying to, trying to, what you call, in trying to master those disciplines. If you don't know Sanskrit, I don't think you can make worthwhile contribution to ancient Indian history, or for that matter, of Gujarati. Or if you don't know epigraphy, if you don't know numismatics, if you don't know iconography, iconology, at least some smattering, but it is required so that you can understand. Because see, translations are always problematic, and those who rely on translations, they are bound to fail. So, see, if you're working in medieval history and if you don't know languages like Rajasthani or languages like Gujarati, Hindi, or Persian, maybe, so there is this misconception that those who understand, I mean, those who want to make a career in medieval Indian history, they need to have a mastery in Persian, which is very welcome. But that is not the only thing, because we know that Muslim University School, Aligarh School, with its emphasis, so much emphasis on Persian, but they don't, to my understanding, they don't try to excavate or to exploit the sources which are written in Hindi or Rajasthani or Gujarati and so many other indigenous languages. So in a way, their historiography is very political. Political in the sense it's more about court, it's more about economy, it's more about okay. પછી જઈએ આપણે 2 મિનિટ. હા, પતવા આવ્યું છે. And I think for a complete or what Mark Bloch and Lucien Favre call histoire total history. For total history, you need to have some understanding of these indigenous sources also. Yes.
Thank you, sir. Aruni sir has another question. Thank you, Dr. Hemant. Do you agree that the Western School of Oriental Research carried away the large historical sources, particularly Marathas, Buddhist art, etc., and hence they missed Gujarat?
See, I would not say that this Western school of uh, uh, Indology or Oriental, whatever.
Oriental research.
Okay, huh? They missed out Gujarat because see, one of the problems is, uh, for example, uh, you are Anantamurthy, who is a very famous Kannada writer, and he knew impeccable English and he wrote flawless English. But when it came to write his own creative, writings, he preferred to write in Kannada, not because he didn't know English, but he made a choice. So there were a number of scholars in Gujarati who knew impeccable English, but despite that fact, they chose to write in Gujarati. Hariprasad Shastri is certainly one of them, but Rasesh Jamindar is another. They made it a point to write in Gujarati for a political choice, right? So there is a number of articles, number of books written in Gujarati which have made very important contribution to the history and culture of Gujarat. But since these are not translated into, and I would like to, this is important. That is why I'm. But these are not translated into English, and those who write in English, the mainstream quote unquote historiography in India, they have this misconception that you have to refer to only English writing. Of course, see, French and German is out of question, but they don't even bother to refer to Gujarati or Marathi or Kannada or Telugu or Odia, writings. But when this Aneta Schmidtchen, who is a German scholar, and she worked on Maitrakas Gujarat, when she was working on it, she made it a point to came to Ahmedabad, and she writes in the first footnote, and I write, I am very grateful to Bharti Sharath for organizing a meeting with Professor late H.G. Shastri and his wife at his residence in Ahmedabad in January 2020, 2011. Now, since this Schmection knew that Professor Shastri worked on Vallabhi inscriptions and produced two volumes on Maitraka Kalina Durga, she made it a point to meet him and to discuss things with him. But most of our historians, they I think I don't know what is it, but they think it is below the dignity to quote indigenous sources, or if you quote Gujarati, or if you quote Hindi, or if you quote Marathi, or if you quote Odia, Bengali, whatever. So Bengali is an exception, but most of the other scholars, they don't refer to uh, 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 this Desha Bhashas as they are called. And some, like Ramchandra Guha, take pride in saying that they are comfortable only in one language, namely English. The downfall of bilingual intellectual, which was published in EPW, he says that he is comfortable in just in one language, and which is English. And he says he gives three exceptions, which I don't want to go into it. But what I'm saying is this must be a reflection of the kind of social, circles he's moving in, and which is a very sad state of affairs, because history is a discipline where see, if someone is working on Gujarat or on Gandhi and he or she doesn't know Gujarati, I don't know what kind of research they would be doing. Or if someone is working on Tirak, and if he or she cannot read Marathi, I think the kind of contribution they would make, to my mind, they would be not very great. So, to come to your point, Aruni, it's not accurate to say that it has been sidelined, but it is also a fact that many Gujarati scholars have not, especially when it comes to the discipline of history, they have not written much on history of Gujarat. True, yes. Unlike
Thank
the Maharashtra scholars. Yes.
Thank you, sir. So, one last question from me. Which themes from the New Horizons and Indology resonate the most with you? And what further questions do you think should be asked in this field?
Uh, I'm not very sure whether I got your question correct. Would you reframe it?
Sir, of all the
No, I read it, but
articles,
I failed to, uh, get the
yes,
purport
sir,
of
like
your.
of all the themes which are covered in this volume, which one
Mhm.
is most of your interest?
See, uh, there are a number of articles which I think are very important, uh, for my own research also, and for the kind of uh, research I would want other people to pursue. For example, this Rasmi Oja's article on Jewish tombstone is a very important article in that, because it gives a very important sociological analysis of the Jewish community that was residing in Ahmedabad. So I think we need to also concentrate on such diasporic communities. For example, we have these cemeteries of, I mean, Dutch cemeteries in Surat. And I think that is a very important topic that can be worked upon. But of course, for that one needs to know Dutch, and given the apathy of modern Indian historian towards learning different languages, I don't know how that can be taken up. Or, for example, the article by Makarand Mehta, which is on the language of uh, Sahajanand Swami, which is also important because it shows how these religious and political leaders, they communicate with their audience. So much more articles in this fashion can be, written, and we can understand these scholars from a very different perspective. We know about that charismatic personality, for example, of Gandhi. But I don't think that much has been done on the kind of language they use, or the kind of idioms they use, or the kind of proverbs and phraseology they use to impress upon the readers or their audience. These are some of them. And of course, there is one article on Panchama coins, but I have not actually. I read it, but I think I need to read it again and again to understand his argument. But these are some of the topics which are really important. Yes.
Thank you so much, sir. Aruni sir has asked you to suggest a good book on Gujarat temple architecture.
Of course. See, these are the chapters in Encyclopedia of Indian Temple Architecture, uh, uh, which are written by M.A. Dhaki, sometimes in joint collaboration with his guru, Manila Bhai Vora. These are very important. And structural temples of Gujarat can also be read, though there are some differences between M.A. Dhaki and this cave Sompura. But there's this recent book by Verma and Rai, which I don't recommend, because I think it has not taken into account the scholarship uh, that was, produced uh, uh, in 60s and 70s and 80s. But I think M.A. Dhaki's work on Gujarat temple architecture is very important, and some of his articles are also very important. For example, you can read his Jain temple architecture in aspects of Jain art and architecture, which was a joint volume published uh, by Gujarat government. It was jointly edited by UP Shah and Ahmed Haki. So Daki is an important source to refer to. Yes, true. Absolutely. Yes.
Thank you very much, sir. Sir has written, very nice to hear from you, and your review work, review of the
Thank
work
you,
is
Aruni. Thank
excellent.
you so much.
Congrats. Yes,
He's
sir.
a
I
very dear
also
friend,
want,
Aruni. Yes. He's Guru
yes,
Bhai, so
and
he would appreciate me. That is natural. Yes. But thank you
yes,
anyway.
and he is also a very he is a well wisher of the history enthusiasts as well.
I'm sure. I'm
So
sure.
thank you, Aruni sir. So, sir, we have come to the end of today's session, today's book review session, and I once again would like to congratulate you for your excellent review and for bringing out the legacy of Professor H.G. Shastri. I now request our honorary president, Shri Nandan Shastri sir, to give his remarks and to propose a vote of thanks.
As the time is running out, I would like to confine my presidential remark to inspire uh, those research scholars who are attending the live event today. Uh, on number of occasions during my 10 years tenure in University of California's Berkeley campus, I had privilege to meet Professor Padmanabh Jaini, who was born into a Jain family in a coastal Karnataka, and during the academic year 1951 to 52, he was on the staff of BJ Institute of Learning and Research in Ahmedabad, uh, teaching Pali and Ardhma to the students. So uh, once I was the only audience in his department at Berkeley, and for continuously 2 hours and 30 minutes, he spoke I was so much impressed. He said that in 7 universities in United States, in the curricula, the references of books of Professor H.G. Shastris are mentioned therein. And to inspire the students who are attending uh, the event today. Let me tell you that the first PhD student of my father, Kantilal F. Sampura, my father motivated him to prepare the thesis in 2 volumes instead of in 1 volume. So Professor Jaini also
So, I
prepared
think your internet.
yeah
Oh,
internet connectivity problem so uh,
yes.
that thesis was prepared in 2 volumes so that may be inspiration in future for other phd students that if you are getting much data uh, feel free to prepare your thesis in 2 volumes. thank, thank you.
Uh, Thank you, sir. Before leaving, Aruni sir has asked one last question. Why the medieval archaeology in Gujarat began to decline as a discipline started from, uh, I do not understand the last part, Gujarat Mehta.
No, no. He means why medieval archaeology in Gujarat began to decline after R.N. Mehta, Ramanlal Nagarji Mehta, who worked on, he was one of the first, Indian archaeologists to work on medieval archaeology. But see, as Ralph Waldo Emerson says in one of his writings, that an institution is but a lengthened shadow of man. So, there are a number of centers which work in one direction at a given point of time, but after the retirement of that person, the institution no longer works in that way. So what is your take on this?
Uh, I think there was some connectivity issue with Dave sir's on Dave sir's
So,
side.
so let me
Yeah,
thank
he's back. He's back.
Dr.
Just
Dave.
a second. Sir, 1 second.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So after the retirement of R.N. Mehta, who worked on Champaner, uh, he worked on a number of sites, of course. But then those who came after him were not very interested in maybe in medieval archaeology, and this is how they lost interest in medieval archaeology. And I don't think anybody is working on medieval archaeology. Though I know that Professor D.K. Chakrabarti worked on Portuguese fort in Daman and Diu, but medieval archaeology. See, there is this misconception also that archaeology deals with ancient times and with more recent times. So that is why I said that this article by Rashmi Oja is important, because in a way it deals with more recent archaeology, right? The tombstones of the Jewish, I mean the tombstones, I mean the tombs of the Jewish people, which are interred in Jewish cemetery in Ahmedabad. Or when I talked about this Dutch cemeteries, there are two Dutch cemeteries in Surat. But these are the topics which people think, somehow they think that these are not history. I don't know. I mean, it's difficult to explain why people lost interest in medieval archaeology. It's the same way in Deccan College also. After Professor M.A. Mate, not much work has been done on medieval archaeology. Yes. And at one point of time, till history was pre-filled. And then for a very long time, Harappan archaeology was pre-filled. Yes.
True, sir. So there are different trends, I guess, from time to time.
Yes.
Man-
So it depends
Manali, and
more
now I
on
have got,
person. Yes, sir.
Yes,
as
sir.
I have got
I would not.
Wi-Fi connectivity, now let me propose what of thanks. First and foremost, let me thank the renowned speaker for the book review, Professor Hemant Dave, and I thank Manali for preparing a very nice brochure for today's event, and for anchoring the entire program. And I also thank uh, Dr. Aruni for asking many questions. And I thank the audience, uh, without which this program would not have been successful. So thanks to all. Namaste.
Namaste. Thank
Yes,
you so much.
I'm. Yes, sir.
No, no,
And
I am
I
saying
also
thank you so
thank.
much, history enthusiasts, and Manali and Shastri sir for having me. And it was pleasure talking to you all on Professor Shastri's contribution and about the commemoration volume that was issued in his memory. Thank you. Thank you indeed.
Nandan Shastri sir for being here today with us and for helping us organize this very meaningful book review program. So we have learned a lot and we are inspired. And I also thank all the members who will be watching this later on. If you have any queries, questions, or suggestions, and if you have anything to add in the memory of Professor H.G. Shastri, please feel free to comment in the comment section. Thank you all once again. We will be back soon with a with another lecture. We are planning something for Kannada Rajyotsava, which falls on the 1st of November. So let us meet then. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
So we are signing off here.
Yeah.